Good afternoon. Welcome to the budget workshop on Thursday, March 3rd, 2022 at 3:34 p.m. All members are present. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. We are here for a budget workshop, so we'll jump right into it.
Okay, thank you, everyone, for being here and going through this budget workshop. You're going to see in the slides, we do need to have a few more budget workshops to really hone in on this budget and present the best possible budget to you and to our community and town council. So this is still a work in progress. The documents that we're giving you, especially the multi-year review revenue and expenditures, are really draft documents. And you know what we have, again, it's a work in progress. We're doing the best we can to sharpen our pencils and really stay true to, you know, the core values, the fiscal goals that we've had adopted, and, you know, the heartbeat of the school department. And I'm, you know, just putting it out there. Each year it gets more difficult and more difficult and even more difficult to really prepare a budget that it really supports our core values and the goals that we have. You know, this isn't a spending problem. I talk about that. This is a revenue problem, and revenues continue to trend down. We are going to show you at our next meeting, you know, just that when our state aid went down and how our appropriations, and you'll see a graph. I mean, it's a fact. And I know it's difficult for everyone, but we can't, as a school committee, school department, raise funds. We try through grants. We keep writing very successful grants. We have a good track record with writing grants, but there's just so much you can do. You're going to see tonight, and I'll comment as we go along, but, you know, just to set the stage, we do have the ESSA 2 and ESSA 3 dollars, and our principals and Michelle and the whole admin team have done a very noble job of submitting those grants that have been approved. We're still working with refining ESSA 3, but we have moved many positions out of our operating budget to support what we need to do for improved teaching and learning and accelerating learning into the grants. And really, that's not the best thing to do when you have 22, close to that, people in your grant line, and you know the grants have a sunset date, that, you know, that's the funding cliff that we all have to face. Just like using fund balance wasn't the wisest thing to do, but we had no choice. So anyway, that's my little introduction to where we are. Again, this is a work in progress. We're going to put numbers out. These numbers are going to be tweaked. They're going to be refined. There might be inconsistency in some of these numbers, but we're doing our best to get the budget to you. And those needed extra budget dates are critical. So what we hope tonight to do is, again, we always ground ourselves in our strategic plan and our fiscal management goals. Review the budget timeline, where I've added those meetings to review and discuss how we build a budget, a school department budget, to determine what % you want us to go forward with the budget to our town council. Tonight, we're honing in on the operating part of the budget. There are a number of pieces to a budget, the operating budget, there's a special revenue budget, which is all of our grants, there's capital improvement. Tonight, we're looking at our operating budget. We want to identify in most areas what was not included in the budget thus far, and we want to show trends that drive the budget numbers. Thus, you see the multi-year review expenditure in front of you, and then discuss as we go on, how are we going to share this budget with our community? At Lee's suggestion, I have sent all our PowerPoints and our video to the town council. I've sent it to Mr. Brown, and he has shared it with the town council. So while they might not be here for this, they do get that information, and hopefully they read it and will call you, me, whomever, if they have any questions. So, you know, again, we want to be transparent with the budget process. So our principals have also shared the budget presentations, or some of them anyway, with their staff. You know, and then once we adopt a budget, I think it's going out and to the community and making whatever steps we can, either through Zoom, through face-to-face meetings, PTG meetings, and so forth. So you'll see the strategic plan. Again, we ground our work in this, our 5 main goals. Next are our fiscal management goals. And, you know, you read these and then you read where we are in the budget and you get a little bit like, oh, we're not meeting these goals. And it kind of brings you down a little bit. But anyway, so I added 3 meetings for us because this budget is not an easy one. And we have tonight's meeting. I'm asking if we can meet next Wednesday. You will see the special revenue grants. And if 3:30 is all right, or you want to change the time, I'm fine with that.
But that's Thursday.
That's Thursday. We had one, but we canceled that. That was going to be a budget adoption. I was very over aggressive with that, thinking we could get this all done, and I apologize. So we did cancel the 10th.
Right. And what's Wednesday? I'm sorry.
Wednesday is the 9th.
Okay, you don't have that on here.
I have
Yes, she
Wednesday
does,
here. I
on
have
the
it
new
right-
one.
Oh, at the bottom.
Oh, okay.
Didn't look down that far. I was looking in numerical order. Okay, got it.
And then I'm asking for a meeting on the 15th, if we need it. If on the 9th, you feel very comfortable with everything, and you give us direction to move forward, we'll gladly do that and have a budget ready for you on the 17th. But I really want enough time to socialize the numbers with you all, so you're familiar with them, and you know, make sure you're comfortable with them. So I did put that 15th in, and then Thursday is our regular school committee meeting, and you would adopt the budget at that meeting. So we're green, but there's no pot of gold. Okay, and then we don't know when we're meeting with our town council to do our presentation. We do know the public hearings are set for the 18th and the 25th. And usually the town council adopts the budget on the 25th
Which month?
of May.
Okay. All right.
Okay,
So
so that's
you're saying like May 18th.
May 18th is the first public hearing. And then May
yeah,
25th would
I
be
see.
the second. Now, we don't set those meetings, the town council does. So a little bit on how we build a budget. You know, a lot of words, you want to see numbers, but I think it's important to know the background, what goes into developing a budget. So we have operating funds and special revenue funds, and that really equals our total budget. In the operating side, we have salaries and compensation, we have benefits, we have any new positions or staffing changes, we have any new requests that you heard our principals, you heard our special ed director, our IT director, and our director of facilities and transportation talk about requests. The school level requests. Then we have purchase services, supplies, materials, equipment, dues, fees, and all the other things. Now, I know many of you have been through this for a number of years, so this is second nature to you, but for those watching it publicly, we'd like to review that. Then the other side of the budget, you have the revenues. And the revenues are largely made up of state aid and municipal appropriations. So there's also federal revenues in there, like Title I, Title II, all those title programs. Impact aid would be a federal revenue as well. Yes.
Okay, question. How much do we get in impact aid for the military per child? Has that increased or is that the same?
So it depends on the appropriations at the national level.
Right.
Typically, a student who's classified as an A student, that's a student who has a military parent who works on the base. It's roughly about $3,000, little about $3,500 for a student whose parent works on the base. That's called a B student. It's about $1,500. And those numbers fluctuate depending on the appropriations from the government and the formula. There's a learning opportunity threshold that goes into that, where the average per pupil cost is in your state and what they pay out. And typically we get about 800 and something $1,000. I'm looking at Cindy. 803,000. It could be a better year based on our numbers and based on the allocations. The group, the National Association for Federally Impacted Aid Schools, is a strong lobbying group in DC, and we've gotten increased appropriations. So that trickles down to every district across the country.
Okay, and when the Coast Guard families come in more, there's just some, but there's more coming.
So
How's that
when we
going?
send home our survey at the end of October,
Mm.
if you're active duty or work on the base, that's how we know we have Coast Guard families, Navy families, Army families.
Okay,
What am I missing?
yeah,
Air Force, Air Force,
And the foreign military.
and the foreign military.
and the foreign, yeah,
So we do a survey and that's how we get our count.
okay,
And we put in an application to the Department of Education, DC, for those dollars.
okay. And what about with children with special needs?
So if you're a military student and a military family and you have a child with special needs, you do get a little bit extra.
Okay,
So that's, a special ed incentive. I don't think it's an incentive, but it's, you get more dollars. And there's also, we work with Senator Reed's office. If there are extraordinary military families that have a student who has extraordinary needs, and again, that's over a threshold that sometimes it's about $56,000, 60 something $1,000, we would apply for extra dollars. So if a student, for instance, comes into our district who's military, that's high-end special ed, needs multiple services to be successful, that student could qualify for extra dollars for the district.
but that doesn't cover our cost.
No.
So then, so the town would have to pick up that cost
Yes.
through the appropriations.
Right.
Okay,
I mean, even the impact aid legislation itself is in lieu of taxes.
right,
Well, if you're only getting
Yeah.
$3,000, that's certainly far less than you would
right,
you
Yeah.
would pay. But, every dollar helps.
okay.
It's a great question, though.
Rosemary.
Yes.
I understand the state aid, local revenue. Has the federal revenue dropped over the 10 years What's the federal, is that the same as the military? No, I don't think so.
No, it's different. So,
What
you
is
know,
the
it would be
federal-
the Title I dollars, the dollars that support students from low income families that need extra support. So those federal dollars have been pretty level over the years. I mean, there have been times that it's dropped, right,
Mhm.
Cindy?
Yes.
Yep. But it's been pretty level.
Right, and the state gets a certain amount of money, and some of those pots of monies they get under those title programs are distributed by very specific formula determined a year in advance at the federal level. So once it gets to the state, that distribution formula is already in place by district.
Like, yeah.
So
they
not
know.
something you can quickly impact. It really depends on your student population, among other things.
How much federal do we get compared to the state? Is
Um,
What do you mean compared to
Well,
the state as a whole?
the reason is an old question. I used to remember, the federal and the state were equal going back about 10, 15 years ago. Not anymore. I remember looking at the federal numbers and
Okay,
They
so
were-
I mean, there is a chart when we get on in this PowerPoint. When you look at revenues, town appropriations is at about 70%. And federal for our operating budget, federal is about 3%.
Right, that's impact aid and
Yep.
Medicaid,
Yep.
Medicare.
Right.
And then the state is 20%. Now, that used to be 60-40 at
Oh,
one time,
Yeah, okay,
you know,
I remember
so.
that. Okay.
The burden of supporting schools has definitely shifted to the town. Each town, each municipality.
does the federal, is that the Title I and Title II?
That's the
inclusive?
federal.
Part of it, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That was enough. I
Yeah.
can
No, it's a
remember,
it's a great question. And
'cause
I'm
we've-
glad
we've
you're
dropped.
asking this, you know, that's why it's important to.
the federal has dropped quite a bit.
Okay. I have another question with the funding. All these mandates that the General Assembly is telling us that we have to do, was it the financial studies and all that? And they say that it's funded. Do we ever get any of that money, or is that just for the inner cities?
I haven't seen anything come in that's unusual.
I mean,
like
they
that.
say it's funded because they give us state aid. But
Okay,
yeah, I know, take our masks down and really have a good laugh. right?
yes.
Yeah.
So they
But it's not.
mandate it
There's
and
extra,
they don't
there's
fund it.
extras, there's impact if you have to add staffing, that's not,
Right.
that's not factored in.
We know, I mean, it becomes that unfunded mandate that we talk about all the
Right.
time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
So part of building a budget too is we take a look at the benefits, and these change from year to year. Our healthcare and dental premiums generally go up. So the town and the school are looking at these increases for healthcare health benefits, a 7% increase. I mean, a dollar figure.
Oh, I'm sorry, I
Yeah,
didn't calculate it. I have my spreadsheet, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, you know, the dental increase is a 5% over last year. So when you look at last year's budget, we'll probably see that in the trends when we get to the multi-year trend. And then we also have to factor in our retirement, our employee retirement. And for our certified staff that are at the non-federal rate, in other words, those staff members who are not paid by federal funds like Title I, it's a 1.76 increase. And for those that work under a federal grant, it's 1.71. And for non-federal, non-certified, there's actually a decrease in the retirement, which is nice.
so I will back up a minute here on the spreadsheet that you're going to have access to there.
Mhm.
If we look at health and medical premiums right now, we're projecting almost $116,000 increase over last year. And that really has to do with, one, the rate change, but also the number of folks who are selecting plans. And oftentimes someone gets married, they relocate, and we swap out for another person. You might have budgeted a family plan, you might be down to an individual, then there's a rebate, and somebody then comes back on and takes the family plan. And that's something they're entitled to by contract. If we look at things like state retirement system, just the defined benefit piece is projected right now to go up 108,000. And that's two factors. One, the increase in rates that they've done, in addition to any change in salary. As salary goes up, the higher rate increases hitting that as well. So it's almost a double, impact for us. And we see that not only in the defined benefit, which is the piece through ERSRI, but also the TIA-CREF portion is also rate driven, and wages change it. So things out of our control.
Then also factored into any of our budgets, of course, are our contracts. Our teacher's contract expires the end of August. If you recall, we approved a rollover and the town council approved a rollover this current year for a 1%. We're still negotiating with our custodial and maintenance staff. Their contract did expire on 6/30/2021. However, they did get a 0.5 increase as part of the last negotiations. So it's not like they didn't go with any kind of an increase this current year. And our teacher assistant contract expires like the teachers, August 31, 2022. They too, that particular group, took a rollover of 1%. Then we have central office and building administrator contracts. They're all individual contracts, and their expiration dates vary. Actually, probably a few expire on the end of this year, 6/22, I believe. And then we have some in 23 and some in 24. And then individual contracts for non-bargaining units, they range from, because some of them are new, 6/23 to 6/24. Okay. Then things we still don't have answers on, we should be getting them within the month, I would hope. What would be our increase or decrease in workman's compensation, our property insurance, our liability insurance, and umbrella liability and auto insurance. So at this time, when we did this draft, we didn't have those numbers. What we did use are our current rates. Okay, so, again, to kind of recap, building the district budget, we have operating budget, which we're going to present today. At our meeting next Tuesday, we're going to present those special revenues, those grants and enterprise funds. And then we have a capital improvement that we submit to the town council. And we have some of our own capital improvement through the tower monies or prior year impact aid. And we haven't heard from the town council what they might approve in the capital improvement. So some of the dollars you're going to see in the worksheet here are, I'm just going to pick on David because he's here. He has put some of those dollars in the capital improvement, but I said to him, let's be safe and let's put it in our budget as well. Hopefully we'll get a clearer picture from the town, what would be funded, and hopefully it will be funded by the town, that we could reduce those dollars that David has put in our budget. Same with some of the grants. We know that the town council has funded Beyond the Bell to May of this year. Speaking to Mr. Brown, he said it is in the budget for the town, but he said, put it in your budget as well. So there's going to be some duplicity until things shake out.
Right, until there's a pathway of funding.
Right. Right. Would be remiss if we didn't have
Okay.
something in. So let me tell you what we know about state aid now. We know that last year, we received 8,132,606. We're projected this year, same. And then there are some increases and decreases. For high cost special ed, there's actually a little decrease. For the multi-language learners, there's a decrease. So we're seeing a projected increase of about 13,000,
Increase.
a decrease, 13,000. You know, not a lot, but every penny counts. These numbers could change depending on the, what the General Assembly does. Okay, but again, the state does a poll in October for enrollment, when they do a poll in March. So we could see some variation of this, but again, for budget purposes, this is what we're budgeting. And, you know, you need a number to plug in.
And this likely won't change until the General Assembly approves the budget.
Right.
Which is right at the end of our fiscal year, so
Right. So we won't
we're
know
using
until
the
then.
most recently released information.
And I know this is Mrs. Fenton's favorite side.
This one. No,
You know, our appropriations last year was 27,467,587. It was about a 2 point something
Yes.
increase from the request that we had,
Was it 2%?
2%.
2%
And, you know, it depends on where you direct us to go. If you direct us to go to 4%, we would be asking for an additional $1 million, 3%, 824, 2%, 500,000, 1%, 274. And if we get 0 or level funded, we would get the same allocation that we did in 2022, which is 27 million. So that's always a factor when we talk about our budget and our needs, you know, the percent that we ask our town for. And you've heard me talk to both you and our town council that, you know, a 2%, we're grateful for any kind of dollars that are appropriated to the schools, but, you know, a 2% of $500,000, when you have contract
Mm.
costs that
That's a
are
lot
over
of money.
$500,000, where do we get the other dollars from? We don't have extraordinary revenues from state aid. We don't have extraordinary increased in revenues from the federal dollars. So over the past years, we have been using fund balance. You know, you've known we use it, our town council knows, and it's not the best way to budget, just like it's not the best way to budget with putting these positions in grants. But we have to service our students and, you know, hold on to some of the core values that we have. So, you know, again, I say it's a revenue problem, you know, and it's not pointing any finger at our town council or anyone, but this is a revenue problem, not a spending problem.
Even with 4%, you won't get
With-
enough money.
We'd get 1 million. Yeah, you're going to see where we are right now. So I wanted you to take a look at these, you know, if I put this on a slide, you'd never see it. So I want to review these expenditures to you. Chris, if you want a copy of this, I'm fine to give you a copy of this, but please know this is a draft. There are some numbers that we're still tweaking. It's not a final number, but you know, I want you to follow along with us in true transparency here. So let's go to the expenditures first. So you're going to see the 5-page document that you have. We wanted to show you the multi-years. We wanted to show you the trend. And we're showing you what's called the object code. So this is a high level, it's rolled up. And this is how it's reported to the town council, and this is how the town council puts it in their revenue book. If you want to dig deeper, we can dig deeper, and we can give you, you know, what exactly is under the salaries, what exactly is under disability, what exactly is under equipment. We have all that backup, but this is really, you know, again, a high level. And what I'd like to do is, you know, go on that right-hand side and show you where we see increases and some decreases as well, and maybe give you a rationale why. So the first increase you're going to see is in our salary lines. Want to talk a little bit about that, or?
Sure. I mean, what we've done right now is to take the existing staff, we moved them forward, we analyzed every staff member in every school, certified support staff, administrators, part-time, full-time, and really looked at making sure we had all the people we're paying through payroll, made sure that as some people move to ESSER dollars next year, that their coding has been changed. So from a staffing perspective, we know that all the staff has been changed and they're correctly coded for where they're going to be next year. We made some assumptions regarding open contract negotiations as part of that work, but have it set so we can adjust it as needed. So I don't think in the general operating budget, that's not where we've added lots of new FTEs. It really is primarily on the grant side. And we have other ones that obviously there are additional needs out there funded that need to be funded beyond grants and beyond operating that we don't have funding for right now. So I think at some point we're going to talk about those.
Okay, you know, going down, you know, you see some decreases where you see the brackets, that's a decrease, you know, and some little bit upticks on some dollars. Again, I'm hitting the high level ones where they're, you know, here's one regular overtime, an increase of $106,000. I mean, that's salary increases. Drive some of that, as well as projects that need to be done. So this is not just the custodians, but if people have to stay and work to get things done and complete, that would be an additional overtime. Again, moving down the line, you see a decrease, and I want to call your attention to the stipends. So it starts with 01, 51401, 51403, 51404. If you lump those together, you know, there's increases and there's decreases. But you need to look at those together. So you know, you say, oh, why $90,000? A decrease for athletics, but really the way, again, that these are coded, it balances out.
Right. Well, it's not a true balance yet, but we have those flagged to go back and look at their workbooks, what they submitted for requests.
Okay.
Oftentimes it's the difference between the athletics coming in and the extracurricular activity stipends. And it's not always clear. So I want to go back. I have them flagged to go back and look. Similarly, there's a general stipends line. Some of it has to do with extra work being done. Oftentimes that's paid for with grant funding. But stipends for technology coaches and the like, those are funded from a grant. And I want to go back and double check those. So it's still a work in progress. The meat of it is solid and good, but there are areas where, as we look at this analysis over time and the difference over the prior year, we want to go back and look more closely at a few areas as well.
So the next line I'd like you to look at is that health and medical premium. You know, in a slide, I said there was a 7% increase. So that builds in that 7% increase. And then, as Cindy said, any plan changes. single to family, family to single, whatever that might be. Again, going down the line, you see some minor increases, and then you look at one that says medical self-insured, $277,000 less, and the one next to it. Again, look at those as a group, and I'm going to ask Cindy to explain that, because part of this is that post-retirement dollars.
Right, so there's a group of 5 lines there altogether that have to do with the money that we make in the OPEB payment, the other post-employment benefits.
Okay.
So the cost of negotiated contract terms when someone exits and retires,
Yeah.
how many years of coverage they get, what the district's contribution is, what they pay. All of that is factored in. So ultimately, there's an annual actuarial study, which we provide the data for. And that looks like it's going to go down just slightly for the upcoming year. So what we need to do still is go in and calculate what's coming in from the retirees and how much the district's paying. So we have to update that annually, because as you know, there are various number of years of post-employment benefits that folks get depending on when they went out.
Right.
And what the contract terms were at that time. So
So
that's a continuous rolling cycle. So we'll be updating those numbers shortly, but we did get the information from the town within the last couple days.
okay. So
So moving down the line, so I just picked out lines. If you want me to discuss other lines, please stop me, and we'll try to answer that. The increase of the retirement, again, that's that increase that I showed you on the other slide, $108,000. Okay, then the rest of the page, are increases, but they're not ones that you say, what's going on here? Okay, going to page 2. The workman's comp is an increase of 62, and that's what we know now. We don't know what that premium is. We used last year's or this current year's premium number. Going down again, our occupational therapists, when you look at the 5-year trend, we had an uptick last year, but we want to level that off, and that's why you see a $30,000 decrease. Going down the line again, bus monitors, there's a large increase there. We're having a difficult time finding local. We have two kinds of bus monitors. One Ocean State hires,
Right.
and then we had several of our own that we hire as a school department. We've been having a difficult time finding local bus drivers for bus monitors for us to hire, and we've left it to Ocean State to hire. So that's why you see a increase there. Going down the line, student assistance. You see an increase of $92,000. This is a lot of, again, if you would drill down, this is the high level object code. If you drill down, what is student assistance? This is support for students, largely special ed, but not all, that need rehab types of services. Okay, moving down. There's a decrease in our web-based supplemental instructional programs. And that, I believe.
So the district, and Michelle and David can speak to this well, I think, but the district uses a number of supplemental instructional programs for students. I'm gonna, off the top of my head, something like the Edmentum products, IXL, Grapevines. They're all used in classrooms with students and teachers, but those have an annual licensing cost for them. And that can become expensive over time, obviously, but if I know that those are reviewed annually, and if it's benefiting our students and being used, and they can track utilization and those kind of things, those are retained. So there was, some activity, maybe last year's budget session, where some were swapped out for other programs and that kind of thing. So it's not that they're just staying stagnant. They're being used and they're requested time after time.
You know, and again, we've gone through all of the workbooks that our principals have put in. Monday, we're going through the workbook requests that our IT department has put in our facilities. So there are two big departments that we still need to look at and their workbooks and scrutinize and scrub lines there. Okay. I'm on page 3, unless you have any questions on page 2.
I do want.
Okay.
Just curiosity, on 53211, what do we use physical therapists for?
In special ed. For students that need, that have core muscle, weak
Motor.
core muscles, gross motor.
That's fine, thank you.
challenges.
Good question.
And those are the kind of costs that are paid as part of our regional payment. But you might recall that we have to break down the regional payment by exactly what it's purchasing. And that's why you see it rolled into all of these different areas.
Okay, on to page 3.
I forgot to ask the question on page 1 about overtime. And I just wanted to ask that, that 106,000, you'd mentioned that earlier. I don't want to interrupt you before, but is that COVID overtime in there?
It could be some coverage. It's also building checks, the custodial maintenance do. And as the superintendent indicated, there are times when they're covering in other buildings and they have to do overtime. When we had some projects going on, the HVAC work and that kind of thing, being available to let the contractors in while they're servicing off classroom hours. And then as the needs have arisen, I'll take my office as an example. When we're down on crunch time and don't have enough hands, folks have to stay later so we can get work done or come in on a weekend to get certain work.
Oh, so that overtime is
done.
for the whole district, for
Yes.
anybody? Okay,
Right.
okay,
Anyone eligible on an hourly rate for overtime.
got it. Okay, sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, page 3. I'm looking at an $84,000 increase. That's 54311. It's maintenance and repair, fixtures and equipment, service contracts and agreements. Gonna turn to Cindy to dig there.
So you can see in the section of maintenance and repair contracts and service agreements, you can see different ones for electrical, HVAC, plumbing. Equipment is another one. So if, as an example of equipment, our backhoe in the summertime when we're doing mowing, we have a few mowing vehicles, et cetera. They're down, they have to go in for repair because we have to keep mowing.
Yeah.
So there's a continuous cycle and we're not replacing that machinery as often as perhaps it should be replaced. And so we're having to spend money on repairs in the meantime. So they do put it on a schedule in the CIP, but it's contingent on funding and we haven't had the funding for it.
As preventative maintenance.
Right.
You know, going down the HVAC service, you know, tremendous amount of service calls there. It's up 75,000. And then I go next down to another large one with the transportation contracts. That's 55,111. Our contractors are Ocean State. There is a 4% increase on our contract with Ocean State. This also includes some of the statewide transportation as well. If a student, a homeless student, or a student placed in DCYF or a special ed student lived in Middletown, they moved to Pawtucket, there's a determination hearing about what's the educational best setting for the child. And if it's determined at that hearing that the child should continue their education in Middletown, even though they live in Pawtucket.
Mm.
We share with Pawtucket those transportation services. So it's very expensive.
Yeah.
We do try to get our students on our Ocean State runs.
Mm.
If we can't, we have to go to First Students, the other bus company.
Went up 500,000 from 20 to 21. Oh. Because in 20, we weren't using buses for a quarter of the year.
Mhm.
Right, we had a
That's right.
compromise payment in there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just had to think about that for a minute. Okay.
Okay, the next big one, 556110 is tuition to other school districts within the state. And this is our CTE programs. Not only Newport, but if a student, we have 2 students that go to, we have a number of students who go to other districts for career pathways. And again, we don't have any choice with that. The former commissioner kind of opened the doors and said, you know, if a student wants to go to Barrington for a robotics or whatever it might be, they should be allowed to go, even though we have one here. So we're working with our legislators to maybe change that. And then the next big one,
Wait
Is-
wait a minute. Is this also including, we have some students that are at CCRI,
yes,
but are we paying for those classes? So CCRI is only free after they graduate from high school? So if they're in a CCRI class now, are we paying that
Right,
bill?
we wouldn't pay, I mean, the state picks up that cost for 2 years, what we're paying. There is dual and concurrent enrollment.
Yep.
Mhm.
I think is the piece that we're paying, but we pay
Books.
textbooks for CCRI.
but
Okay.
books wouldn't be in here.
Got it. And then I just want to say in transportation, you said that they went up 4%, but I just think it's important for the public to know that Ocean State has been extremely good with us, and they were phenomenal during the year of last year for the pandemic.
Mhm.
So I do want to make that clear that Ocean State had to go up at this point, but they didn't go up last year, if I remember correctly.
No, it's been a consistent because it was a multi-year contract with a
Right.
consistent term.
So, okay.
So, but you're absolutely right. I mean, they do everything they can to make sure we can get the service. And when we talk about not putting students on statewide, it is less costly and more efficient for us to do it. And sometimes they'll keep that student that needs the transportation right at the forefront because they're trying to find one of our buses, one of our vans, something that's in the area that's going to make this work. And as soon as they can be moved off statewide, they move them onto our buses. So I should have mentioned too that Bob, this was his first time through, and transportation has a lot of nuances to it. So we did ask for a meeting with Ocean State, which is going to be coming up shortly, where we can sit down and go through everything we have and make sure it's as tight as it could possibly be. Because they are high costs.
Strange question.
Expensive to run a bus,
Are
though.
we parking the buses at Gaudet on Turner Road,
No.
or are we back over? in
We're back here at Oliphant,
Oliphant? Okay.
and we're paying for it. It's in our bill too.
Okay, no, I was gonna tell you I wasn't gonna ask. On that, I just,
That was a good idea, but it didn't go over well with our neighbors. We needed to be good neighbors. Then the next big line, which probably shouldn't be a surprise, are our tuitions. It's an increase of $500,000, more than $500,000. And these are students who are Middletown students who have special needs, special needs, what do I want to say? Issues that we can't service in our school department. So they go to other schools, but they are our residents.
Right.
You know, I know, Chris, I think you had a question about that at one of our last meetings. So, you know, I'll be happy to talk to you about that, but that's the special ed out of district placement. So they live in Middletown. our students. We try to accommodate them as best we can with the programs we have, but there's some that have, you know, multiple needs that they do need a specialized program. And those schools increase. Our numbers haven't increased. When you look at the data, and I know our special ed director shared that with you, they hover around 43, 45 students. So there's not like an uptick of 10 or 12 students, but you have to remember each of these schools that they go to increase their tuition by 2% usually every year. So that makes a difference. So that's a large jump. Okay. All right, moving on to page 4. I'm going to jump down to custodial supplies, which is 56,219. And that's an increase of $193,000. Now, this could be driven by COVID, anticipating that we will need to clean and have masks and, you know, all those things for the coming year. Again, this is a workbook that we have not reviewed with our facilities director, and we will be doing that Monday. That number could get a little less or could be a little higher, where we hope it's going to be less if we need to scrub that line. And then the next big one is at the end of the page where you see $500,000 and you say, what are we doing in equipment? So, you know, I dug a little bit here, and when you drill down to that line, 57,305 equipment, what's in that? Well, that's where I asked David to put all the technology things. He put a large amount in here, but he also put it in CIP. If CIP gets funded or part of it, this line could be reduced. Same with some of the facility needs. So it's a lot to do with our laptops, copiers, our network. So that's why this line is driven so high. Okay. And is that the last page? No. Page 5. Nothing much on page 5, I guess.
I know you have a savings of almost $500,000.
$500,000 savings.
All right, well, talk to me about that,
Budget
Miss Cindy.
contingencies.
That's in the current year. So, and we actually just had a recent discussion about with the town about that. It needs to be allocated among the lines. It was a cost we had set aside for some ongoing staffing discussions that were happening. So it shouldn't be showing there any longer, but that's because we have a massive budget adjustment that's coming that basically trues up every staff member's wage and benefits for the current year to the right lines that they should be on. So, and it also looks at all of the grants to make sure those are as current as we have information on them as we move toward the end of the year. So we have that probably 99% done, but we had to stop that work to work on budget. So we'll be back to that shortly. That's just an internal, it doesn't change the bottom line of the budget at all. What it's doing is shifting between the lines, and that needs your approval as a school committee to do that. Does not need the council approval. That was recently clarified for us.
So again, I want to say these numbers aren't as clean as we want them to be. We still have 2 big departments to go through, IT and facilities. But, you know, for this meeting, we wanted to give you these numbers and show you these trends and give you a sense of where we're at. Again, this is a draft. I think putting out any particular numbers would be irresponsible, you know, media wise or whatever, but I want everybody to see this. So let's go to the revenue side of the books. And Cindy, you want to do the revenues?
Sure. Let's start with the 8.5 by 11 that's going portrait size. So this is what we're projecting for the upcoming budget. So you can see that what we used here, and again, we're looking for your guidance tonight. When we look at the other taxes, local governmental units, that's the town appropriation number. Right now, the number that you see represents a 4% increase. Okay, so if that's not where you want us to go, we'll be going in to adjust that. The tuition is based on students coming into us. We have a number of students who are in our CTE pathway programs now. And that represents 8 students at the going tuition rate among the island communities. Earnings on investments, the next series of line, bookstore, lock sales, other fees, those are generally pretty small. The earnings on investments were mostly coming to us from either capital or some of our investment funds that are being held for scholarships in the future. Rental income, so that was income that's gone down the last couple of years with COVID. So while we're hoping for a rebound, we did not put it up at its prior year levels. And that's when someone rents the gym, they rent a field, that
Yeah,
kind of
right.
thing. And there's a revenue, a charge for that. Contributions and donations from private sources. We occasionally will get some small donations that are not earmarked for a particular school or activity. And so those go into the general operating budget. Same with miscellaneous. There are a number of things that come in over the course of the year. You can't really plan on them. Examples might be jury duty. When we get a summons, there's a small fee that comes in with that. So all of those kind of things go into a miscellaneous. Cell tower revenue is one of those things. Nothing huge in there, but we have a pretty level amount over time. Similarly, in prior years, we had prior year refunds. We didn't have any projected right now for the WB Mason contract. So schools across the state use the state MPA for that. That's office supplies, school supplies, that kind of thing. And they do get a rebate check at the end as part of that contract, which goes back into purchasing, but it comes in as a miscellaneous sometimes. State aid, again, that's the current projection out of RIDE. That was the governor's recommended aid. And so we'll wait to see where that goes. The impact aid is essentially level funded off what we projected in the current year's budget. So we're not expecting any great increases right now, but we'll continue to monitor that. And the impact aid, we are seeing, because of the increase in the out of district tuition dollars and the that we're paying, and that means the services and students who are receiving those services, we're anticipating a small amount of additional Medicaid revenue because likely that would be part of that service. That service would apply. So when we get to that, you see a $38.2 million revenue number. But what you saw in the expenditures was an initial proposal of 40.9 million. So there's a gap there. And that gap is something that has to be addressed, or we'll be making additional cuts to the budget in a pretty significant amount if you look at that. So I don't know, Rosemary, do you want to address that further?
Sure. We have been meeting weekly with Mark Tangway, our town finance director, and our town administrator. We have a meeting scheduled for Monday, and we'll be talking about this revenue gap. I know the town administrator has some thoughts about how he can help with, a possible, with the gap, a revenue gap here. So we'll be working with him and, have some answers hopefully by our meeting next week to plug that in. But, if we don't, that's $2 million is an awful lot to cut. I really don't. Let's close shop. I can't even talk. It's so bad. If we have something. Again, we have to scrub the numbers a little bit better here. But we wanted to give you something. Depends on how negotiations go with our bargaining units. Everybody has been working super hard and diligent to bring our students where they need to be. Hopefully at our meeting, either the 17th or after, Michelle will share with you some of the data that we are seeing student growth in, with the work that we're doing, with the great work that our teachers are doing every day in their classrooms, with the supports of the ESSER $2, with the training our teachers are getting, with the right to read, with the new, a number of factors are shown, and kids being in school and not in a hybrid model, but being in school consistently. We're seeing some growth that we should be proud of. Beyond the Bell program certainly helps that too. It's one of those factors that is improving that. So that's kind of that multi-year review of expenditures and revenues.
So, Mrs. Krager, just to reference, one of the reasons for that gap too, and I'm sure you see it, for that gap is the fact that there is no reappropriation of fund balance being applied to this.
Okay. So
Simply because we don't have those kind of dollars anymore.
dollars anyway.
But because they've been used for several years now, there is a significant hole there that's created by that loss, in addition to the requested needs, the dollars to fund that. Yeah, so
We
I just
just
wanted to be sure you were aware we weren't using.
So
it.
if you look at the page going this way now, did you put it in the other? Oh, yeah. That second line down, 41,250 reappropriation fund balance. You can see the dollars we have used since 17, a small amount in 17, but close to $500,000 in 18, over 400,000 in 19, 700, close to 800,000 in 20. Last year, $1 million we used in fund balance, and we're out of money.
In the current year, we have the 840.
Yeah, the 840.
Can I do have a question. Refers to both these pages. If we get our 4%, now this is, I see we're 2.6 million in the whole, 2.7, I guess. All right, if we get our 4%, does that take us down to only 1.6 million in the hole?
No, the 4% is already built into the top line of the municipal appropriation. So if you choose not to go for the 4%, that's going to increase the gap.
Okay. I
Yeah.
do have one other question, and, well, not one other, but what do we pay for the G5 tower out there? What revenue do we get from that? Or is that the town? owns that?
No, the tower is under school department. And there is some revenue. I'm trying to remember, it's less than 20,000 on an annual basis. There's some competition for the tower right now. And so it looks like there's some negotiation with another company going on, and they want to increase those revenues over the next 5 years and then lock in a contract to keep it extended. But it's a long-term contract we're in at the current time.
And a nickel under 20,000. Can I ask you, is that Verizon, T-Mobile, or
All
private?
of them, I think.
I think it's an AT&T tower.
Yeah.
Oh,
lease.
AT&T, sorry, how could I
Yeah.
forget?
It was AT&T.
And it
the
is a
last time we
5,
came in.
We'll
A
get back,
long
we'll
lease.
get back to you. I think there's multi-carriers on that, but we'll get back to you.
Oh, of course there is.
There are
You-
definitely
You
multiple.
buy it and then you rent it out. And I'm assuming there's still probably G4, not G5 yet.
I don't think so, but I don't know that factually.
Let's make a little difference.
Question.
Okay,
ahead, Lou.
thank you.
All set, Bill? Yeah,
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
Okay, how many new students did we have this year in September?
So
that registered?
typically, we enroll over 500 new students. So, we do have about 500 students who leave,
Mhm,
and then we enroll,
Another
500 new students,
Okay,
over 500 new students. Registration office is very busy. You know, again, a lot of them are local, many of them are military
Right.
and war college.
Okay. Did we have any new students in January?
We do get a number of students in January because the war college class change.
Okay.
I didn't have a chance. I need to take a look at how many we have.
That were
Gonna see. Yeah,
military.
yeah.
Well, there's a military class coming in right now.
Yeah.
But there's a change right now in March. The changes are in July, November, and March. It's the 3 classes that we have at the War College. And people come,
Mm.
and people leave, and people come. But it's hard to know who's coming, and what age group they're gonna be, and what schools they're gonna be in,
And what particular needs
what
that they
particular
have.
needs.
I mean,
that
they
they
could
have.
have, they could need English language learning service, you know, they could need that particular support. They could need acceleration support depending on where what state they're coming from or what country they're coming from. So they could need supports that way. They could need could have special ed needs as well.
And what
So
about?
it's you can't plan for
you-
that.
No, you can't.
No.
They just come in and we have to
Right.
service them, but yet that's not in the count. What about our homeless population?
Our homeless population now,
Was hovering around 90
90?
students. And that fluctuates a lot depending on their status and
Right.
what's happening.
Yes, okay. So 90. And they also have needs. Is it like, do they have like an IEP or is it?
I mean, it all depends.
adaptable?
It all depends. Some of them might have nothing and some of them might have IEPs and some of them might have English language. They might be English language learners. We do have
Okay.
quite a few L families that are also homeless. But you know, every student brings different needs. So it's
Right, so there's, which tax, us that we need more money. I mean, you see it.
sure.
Okay, thank you.
okay, then the next slide, this is the operating budget, the numbers, there's a little discrepancy, I believe, on what you have in front of you and our salaries, and we'll fix that, for you. Did you want, no discrepancy or?
No, because the salaries aren't just the first line, it's everything in the 51 series.
Okay.
Oh,
No, it tallies out.
So that's, our revenues. Showed it to you another way. And then we did these graphs. Again, this will change as our numbers become firmer or clearer. Again, the revenues, our town supports 70% of the budget. When you look at our salaries and benefits, that's, 54 plus 19%. That's a large portion of our budget.
I think it's important that we remind people that that looks really big, but we have a very large department. We're running a huge business, essentially. So, a lot of folks would like to pinpoint, oh, we have too many employees, too many this, too many that. Reality is those are the needs.
When you have those monthly meetings with Mr. Brown and other, or weekly meetings now. Okay, my question is, I know that the town pays for, salaries and benefits for the police and fire and DPW and all, the town. Why are they not, have like a rationale why they're not paying for the schools? Salaries and, benefits and retirement and all that?
Well, I think if I was sitting on the town council, they would say they are when they give us 28 million.
But, so
If
they're
I had a
feeling,
town council hat on,
they're feeling that they're paying in that 28 million, but then it's not covering all the other expenses. So they want to look at it as they're covering salaries.
Ah,
But
And then they're
sometimes,
cutting
they're-
something
but
else.
sometimes they're not,
And they're not.
when you get zero
yeah,
in a year,
Mhm.
you know, and I try to make that point, you know, again, we're grateful for anything we get, but, you know, they don't cover those salaries. When you get
That's not
level funded.
but that's not equity.
No.
Yeah. But to them, they see it, salaries go first, everything else is.
Well, I mean, you know, let's put it on the table. There's a trust factor with the town council and the school department. We're trying to be as transparent as possible with these numbers. We're trying to get better at it, about telling a story. And you know, all we can do is try.
So I've got a question about your meetings with the town administrator and finance director. So when you have these meetings and you're transparent and you see all this, is he passing this information on to the council? Because sometimes I feel like it's not always getting there, and then when we get to a public meeting, it seems a little bit different.
So, you know, at Lee's suggestion, we have been sending the PowerPoints, we've been sending the data, we've been sending the video, or you call it that, to him to send to the town council. I do
Okay.
think it gets to them. And any other information, when I do my weekly updates to the staff,
Mm.
I send that to Maureen Maurer,
Okay.
who
yes,
does the
right.
department, she
Mhm.
does a summary of the departments,
Mhm.
and she puts most of that information in the departments
Okay,
with the other departments. So, you know, we're trying to build communication, we're trying to build that trust. It's, you know, gonna take us a while to do that. And if we're fuzzy with answers or fuzzy with numbers, it doesn't help us in any way. So we need to be crystal clear. We need to, you know, I use transparent a lot. Everybody uses that, but we need to not tap dance. We need to answer the questions as best we can with the information that we have and demonstrate that we are not hiding anything. You know, again, using fund balance to support support our budgets over the year should not have been a surprise to anyone,
yeah.
anyone.
It wasn't a surprise to anyone. We've sat here for years talking about this was gonna happen when the funding formula first came into place. And Lee, you and I have been sitting around this
Oh,
table an
I know.
awfully long time, and Bill, and we have had this discussion since day one, that the funding formula cliff was going to happen. And that we were going to, that it was going to hit us hard as a community. That discussion happened 11 years ago when the whole thing came out, 12 years ago. And then as every year, we brought it up and talked about it, talked about it, talked about it. Nobody wanted to hear it because they didn't actually believe it was gonna happen. But what the community doesn't understand is that the funding formula was created because Middletown was overfunded. We were overfunded. We were getting money like crazy, more so than what we should have. And that's why the funding formula was created, because the town should have been supporting the district more so than the state. And that's how the fund, now, did I like the funded formula? No, we all wanted it though. Everybody wanted it.
It was predictable.
And, yeah,
And I
well,
mean, I think what we need
it
to,
was predictable
to
until we
add-
found out we were losing money instead.
Mm.
I think we need to ask our town council, give us some predictable percent that we can count on every year. You know, there's the
Right.
drama, you know, the uncertainty and all, it takes a toll on everybody.
Right. And
you
it's a
know,
roller coaster ride.
And more importantly, it takes a toll on our
students.
students. And we don't need that. So if we can predict that we would get 2%, 4%, 3%, whatever it might be, and it's planned, we need to plan. Now, we'll show you, we're going to show you next week a trend line where you have our state aid going down and where the appropriations. You know, they should probably have an intersect.
Mhm.
and they
Yeah,
don't.
and they don't, they just went down.
They won't. You know, again, hindsight is 2020, when we were starting losing the state aid, we all should have sat around and said, how are we gonna do this together?
We did. We did sit there and they said, you need to figure it out.
Okay.
We had lots of discussions with them. And it was a different council for some of them. Some of them are still there. But
But the important
now
thing.
but it's always,
And
an
we've always
accusation
made it
to
work
us.
because that's what we do.
Correct.
We always make it work,
But we're-
a supportive school committee, a supportive staff.
but
We
we're
always make it work.
accused- But we're accused way too
Well,
often.
you know what? We need to move
Of
forward.
not doing it. I know, but when you look at these numbers and you look at other districts and you say, okay, we're giving them this information. Technically, by statute, correct me if I'm wrong on this, we're not required to do this. We're doing this to work together and be transparent. But by law, they're supposed to give us a bottom line dollar amount. And so when we do this, and even when we're transparent, we need to get them on board for them to understand that these numbers are real. And even though we're transparent and you're breaking this down, and I know you can break it down even more. And we've done this now for a couple of years. I still, and you talk about the lack of trust, and I guess that's where I question, how much more can we give them in information? That's my question. If we're already being this transparent, we invite them to our meetings, we invite them to come. What more? I guess I want that same answer that you do. What, in regards to a predictable percentage, and also be more specific of what do you want? What is it that you're looking for? Because what happens is we go to meetings, we get in together as a group, and they have 7,000 questions in a meeting. And then they get frustrated when we don't have the information and the answers in front of us. So it's my 2 cents for the night. Sorry.
No,
but
but
I just feel like that we get beaten bloody, and then there's no reason for that. And we should be working together, not always attacked and criticized and accused of wrongful doing, because we're not. Have there been errors? Yes, but it doesn't mean that anything was maliciously intended to be that way.
Can I suggest something? I'm assuming somebody's going to be standing in front of the town council. Bring up that funding formula. That was the first thing I saw, and it seemed logical. And I can tell you why we got more money. But remember, that funding formula kind of brought us on a downward slope
It's a
for a
cliff.
long
We
time.
hit the bottom of the cliff.
Yeah.
Well, we bring that up, but then their response is that's no excuse.
So
Okay,
anyway,
just,
we had,
All right, I'll stop.
so
my
we
rant.
had a big debate whether to put this slide in. Because the presentation doesn't support this, does it? Supports some of it, doesn't support most of it, right? So we went back and forth about this, but we decided we're going to put this in because this is our core. As Michelle put on this is the heartbeat. And this is what we aspire to be for and want for our students and to increase their student achievement. And, we're strapped because of the budget in many ways. We try to make lemonade. And, again, putting those positions in ESSA, not the best move. But again, we all look at each other, including all of you, as a school committee, and you say, what's the best for students? So we're doing that. So we put this in to kind of ground us again. But it does give you pause. And then this, this kind of, you put that slide in, and we said, we need all of this to
Meet that slide.
meet that slide.
Mhm.
And let me tell you, the 2 lines where you see 1 and 2, the 2 yellow lines there, or cream color lines, are the only thing we put in the budget. We put our 4 part-time TAs in the budget because that's contractual now. We did pay for it out of a grant. We put our building-based subs because you heard our principals say that was really critical for them. But priority 3 is the need for a special ed teacher. we have to look at the caseload and the need. It's not just the numbers, it's the need. And then you go to 4, we know we need another L teacher. Look at the interventions that we need, literacy, math, 4 math. And those are not included in our budget.
Can I ask you,
And what is it?
what does the TAS and the GLA mean?
A priority.
Teacher
right.
assistance is the TAS. And
The
GLA
very
is
Bottom line there.
the Learning Academy.
So that's 4 part-time teacher assistants.
At the
At Gaudet Learning Academy.
I have a question. How many of these are mandated from the state and federal?
Well, I mean, special ed is mandated
Okay.
based on, numbers and need. L is mandated.
When the part-time GLA is a contractual obligation
And yeah,
Okay.
to be able to give our teachers their planning time. We need the
Oh, okay.
TAs
Yes,
to cover.
okay.
so those others are, things that are needed for our students to succeed, especially we always had the need to increase our student achievement. COVID compounded that.
Right. Now, is there some way that we could put what is mandated, what is not? I mean, if it's mandated, we have to do it. And I know that Senator Pearson, in finance, he's worried that, according to him, the state was paying a lot and the towns and cities were cutting back when they should have been increasing. And I know that's a big concern of his that he's working on. So it's like, okay. But I think if we know, and the town council knows, the town and the community, that these are mandated, that we have to do it, then this is our budget. This is, and if we don't have enough money, then it's mandated. I mean, we have to have some repercussions to say, look, they're
Well,
not
of this,
funding.
the 4 are mandated.
Okay,
Well, 1 is
Is-
contractual. The building-based subs are not mandated,
no, but that's okay.
but they support teaching and learning.
Right,
The
but
special
so-
ed is mandated and the L is mandated.
Right.
Let me
so-
just go to the next slide
Okay,
and
maybe-
show you how we're trying to do this. And this is our concern after FY '23. ESSA 2, you see, we have these in the operating budget. We have a student success teacher at the high school paid by ESSA 2. We're moving it over to ESSA 3. And then what happens? She's at the high school. She's working with students. It's a class that, if we get students up to grade level or, closing the gaps, the students leave, she takes other students in. A guidance counselor is paid by this year by a grant, next year by a grant. This has to be assumed in the operating budget for the following year. I mean, all of these on the right should be assumed in the operating budget next
So,
year's budget.
right. So if we somehow put down in our whole budget, what is mandated, these things, what is mandated, and then what is supporting the mandates? Is that, will that help the town council with, are we putting enough information that these are mandated, these are not what we would like, but they're mandated, and the S is for supporting, which we need, and we explain why.
So, just to go back to the mandated part, as I said, these aren't mandated. The literacy intervention is not mandated. The literacy coach isn't mandated. The math intervention isn't mandated. But those are the right things to do for our students
Yeah. So
in this community to have them be successful students.
And I'm saying, yes, they are the supports to make the mandates happen. And, to me, that is just as important just so everyone knows, these are things that we have to do, and how do we support them? You know,
So I think the story has to be not so much the mandate is our students need these programs, need these supports,
I think at the
or
state
it's a
level,
combination.
yeah, at the state level and in working with people, I think, yeah, these are mandates that someone has told us that we have to do this, whether it's the federal government, the state, the General Assembly, RIDE, and what is not mandated supports these mandates.
Well, some of the biggest mandates that have come down have been on high quality curriculum, the Right to Read Act.
Yeah.
And just so you know, we have covered a lot of that with grants. You
Right.
know, we've had availability to write a grant for literacy so that we could pay for our curriculum materials. You won't see any curriculum materials in the operating budget because we've written grants for them. You don't see any professional development in the operating budget. The mandate was that all of our teachers were trained over 50 hours in Right to Read. Yet you're not going to see any of that in the operating budget. Even though that was a mandate, we wrote to grants for that. So I think it's also a little confusing when it comes down to the fact that we are working really hard to pay for those things, not even included in the operating budget.
But they're still mandated. You're
Um,
just writing grants.
Yeah,
What
those,
happens if?
right, those
That's
pieces
what I
are,
worry about.
and you're right, because as math and science come up with high quality curriculum, we don't currently have any grants that are matching those purchases. So while we've written a little bit into ESSER, we still have a real
right.
question to answer as far as how we'll be purchasing those, and those are mandates. Those are mandates. So I understand what you're saying for sure, and I think the L falls into that very well because we have to be in compliance in servicing our L students, and right now we're not meeting compliance.
Right. And to me, that's the sin, is we're not providing because we don't have the money. We're trying with the grants and doing everything we can, but we're not funding these mandates.
Well, we have to date, like I said, I want to be clear, we have funded the mandates through grants. There, right
Yes.
now, we
Well,
have, and the
But
only
that's
thing
not
that,
on here. Like,
I was gonna say, where do we
Well,
see that?
because we're talking grants next session.
Okay.
So right now, this is just operating budget. So you're not going to be seeing that until we talk special.
Which is why I think
revenues.
this is important. It's not public yet because we're not seeing the whole picture.
Not yet. No, not
This
yet.
this is just a portion, and I really think that the grant money and where it's assigned of how hard we are working to get revenues, even though we can't raise, we can't create revenues, but we can get it through grant funding. That's gonna be a big, huge line item specified of how much money we are getting in grants and what are we doing with that
But you
money.
look at the bottom line here, we used
I-
650.
I understand that,
for
but you have a
grants.
lot of other, but see,
Yes.
those numbers need to be very clear on the similar page like
Mhm.
this.
And they will be.
That will be in the next round.
Yeah,
It's just
Yeah.
going to be easier to read and it's gonna
Yeah.
clarify that
Yeah.
we're not just asking for 28 million in taxes or whatever, the full 4%. We have all of this money that we've designated because we brought in this and this is what we've used it for.
Mhm.
And the other thing I was thinking, and I know you have this because we had these numbers already, and I'm wondering if this would be a really good slide to add. When you have these things right here, could we put another column? Question, you can say no. Put another column in here saying, how many students are requiring these services of why we need this position?
yeah, I think that could go back to when our principals presented and you saw like how many kids had PLPs and PMPs.
Would you
Right.
get that grand total? And because this is not specifying what school it's going to. So let's just specify, okay, here's one more column right here. How many EL students, now you have it right here. This would bring us to 5 for 200 students. I like that. Literacy intervention, this would allow for 4 for K-3. Put a number underneath that of how many K-3 students do we have?
Mhm.
I think that's important for people to see that you're not servicing one classroom. You're not
No, I'll
servicing.
go back to their critical slides from each school and be able to tell
They
you
had
how
certain,
many.
certain
Yeah.
percent
Yeah,
that
they
they
had,
had.
and they had great numbers in there.
Yeah.
And so I know that data is available and I hate to
Yeah.
ask you to do more
No,
work.
no, we already have that done.
Same thing with with the math, this is how many students are requiring this at this time. And yes, we did have some challenges before COVID, but COVID has definitely exacerbated our numbers. And
Oh, yeah, I mean, we went over our
Numbers
state
up.
assessment scores and you saw what percentage we're at in math. So,
correct.
I
So,
mean,
Everyone.
that's what's driving this. And,
Right.
these were the most critical positions we came up with, but there was a long list prior to that, that we had to cut down. So,
I think by showing that you use the ESSER dollars for certain things is important, but beyond the ESSER dollars, because we're only getting X amount of dollars, you're putting that to good use. These are the positions that are above and beyond what we can do for ESSER. And same thing on this side, when you have the student success. I think that program, because I know what it's about, because I have a high school student. But I think there needs to be something next to that of what exactly, for the town and the community to understand, what exactly that position entails. Why is that position so
Okay,
critical?
We can add a descriptive.
That's a critical position right now
Mhm.
for our students. I already mentioned about the reading. The service family counselor coordinator. I really think she's got to have some data of how many students walk in that door and how many support.
the amount of families that
Okay.
she's been working with is
So,
incredible, yes.
I really think it's critical that there's a number next to that.
Personalize it.
Personalize it,
Mm.
exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's the word I'm looking for.
Mhm.
Let's hone in and say why we need this. How many people are utilizing these services? This isn't for 10 students.
Mhm.
Yeah.
This is for hundreds. And I think that's critical that,
It's how we present it,
right.
it's
So
like,
we need
give
to
the
bring it down and
information.
say, okay, and I'm so happy that we're bringing the building-based subs in. And again, I think
Mm.
that needs to be, we do have it here, consistent person in each building daily. I don't know how big you want to make this thing, but I just think that even that may not be clear for some people.
Well, I mean, we could go back in and add the slides from each school that explained that spoke
think
to all of
so.
these. That was in our last presentation because we
Right.
focused on teaching and learning.
Right.
I think, next week, next time we meet, we really need to focus on what the grants are bringing to the table
Yes.
and what they're covering as far as the mandates go. We've talked about ESSER a lot, but we haven't talked about our CRP. We haven't talked about our literacy, our DODEA grants. I mean, we have a lot of money, Perkins, categorical.
Categoricals,
We
yeah.
have so much that comes in, and we apply for in grants. And
All
the
very
fear,
specific.
the fear is the number of positions we have put in to the
Correct.
grants. Typically, we are not this high of
Mhm.
positions in grants
Right.
because we fear like
Not sustainable.
Yeah,
not
what
sustaining
if?
it.
Right.
But when you come down to the critical, do you lose this position or do you put it in? Well, we've put some things in for 2 years.
And
That needs to be very clear. That's why you have this here and I get it, but it needs to be in here somewhere that these positions are not, in 23, 24, they're going to be zero again.
Yeah, the explanation next week would really be like what the grants are funding and when that funding is ending. So,
Okay.
you would be able to
So-
see
And
like
how
an
do you-
ESSER.
Instead of this, this is my inability to read graphs very well. So I'm trying to make it dummy proof. And I'm not insulting anybody. I'm dummy. So I need it dummy proof for me. If you put it in here of 21, 22, what we're using, 22, 23, 23, 24. So you've got four TAs at Gaudet Learning Academy for 22, and then
We'll
all of a
present all
sudden.
the grants in that form. We can
that would
easily
be
do
good. And
that.
then all of a sudden in 23, 24,
There's nothing.
there's nothing for those. So I
Right.
think that's gonna be important to show what the 2-year projection. They want projections, they want a 5-year projection. Let's give them a 3-year projection of what these positions are gonna look like. So that it's such a clear graph. That someone like me can read it. Because I'm not good at that stuff.
No, we do the same thing. We question after we see it and then we, massage it a little bit and back to the drawing board.
Okay.
yeah. And
I feel like I'm shouting into this microphone. I keep forgetting how sensitive it is.
And I really do think we look at the community that is supporting us and they're older. And when they went to school, it was very different. If you didn't know, the subject, you stayed back. It didn't make any difference how long or how many times you stayed back. but things are different and it's hard for them to understand all this if you don't have those little caveats of this is mandated, we have to do this. And yeah,
And they never had a PT, OT,
Oh,
speech pathologist. Their speech pathologist was,
Yeah.
they all had a hand mirror in their desk. And Miss Crocker would tell them to get out their hand mirror and look at their own tongue and their teeth while they practice their phonemic sounds. And guess what? You look at that generation and how many speech impediments do you hear in a 65-year-old person? Not too many. I have to tell you, I have never in my entire life heard anybody over the age of 50 have a speech impediment. So something's, our speech and language challenges for our children has changed dramatically. I mean, that's got to do with societal challenges too, but people don't understand. And that's the thing, Lee, you're right. Some people in that generation don't understand. Why do we need a speech pathologist?
yes.
Why do we need OT and PT? Well, when we were growing up, we were all climbing up trees and hanging upside down by our knees. And we developed those muscles in our core.
Mm.
And we were out riding the bikes until dark and weren't allowed. We didn't have TVs and laptops and computers and tablets. And we went outside and played. And our gross motor development happened naturally. And I think that, a lot of times we don't have that as much for our society. But we offer things, but not everybody does it. Anyway.
So anyway, our next steps would, we're going to review the operating budget with the facilities and technology. We're going to show you the special revenue funds, those grants, and review and final approval of the FY23 budget. Okay, so let's see how far we get next Wednesday. And if we need that meeting on Tuesday, we'll see. We could be ready. Okay. And
I
know
apologize, when I
you're-
was looking
you're
at
going
these dates are the same as, I didn't see February because it's the same date and the same day of the week in
Oh,
March.
yeah.
So I kind of, I don't know, I
Okay.
was messed up.
So, Tammy, you're gonna zoom in, right?
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
I'm the 15th to the 22nd.
Yep.
I'm
Okay.
out of town. I will
Okay.
Zoom. Anything that happens during that time.
So those are
So
those two
next week
meetings.
you'll be here though.
Yes.
Good, great.
Mhm.
So the 17th will be important because that,
Mhm.
we're gonna have to vote on that, even
Mhm.
if you can't stay for the whole meeting. Okay.
I can do that.
Um,
Yeah, and I'll check.
Any other questions for us?
But I have to travel too.
I have a question for Dave.
Me?
For Dave,
so
are all our administrative computers backed up to the cloud every day?
So our administrative computers are backed up to our remote servers, and our online services like our online productivity suites like Microsoft and Google are backed up to the cloud because it's hosted in the cloud.
Every day,
When some things are backed up to the cloud, it's backed up instantaneously.
automatic? Yeah.
Yes, so it's instantly backed up when it's backed up using cloud services.
I was just thinking if anybody ever hacked into our system here and locked us out of it, it would just be unbelievable.
Right, so basically it depends on the system. There are multitude of systems. Some are hosted here physically, some are hosted via the cloud.
Do you think we are relatively hacker-proof compared to the world?
I don't like to publicly comment on things like that just for security purposes, but I'd be open to discussing our network integrity in the executive session style
Sure.
environment.
Sure.
I like that answer. I feel like in the news, they talk about making this and what they were doing over there and how they're teaching them how to make things all publicly and putting the formula on the internet. I'm like, scary. Anyway, thank you very much, everybody. Anything else?
No.
Okay, Mr. Arnold. Make a motion, sir.
I make a motion that we adjourn at 5:11.
Second,
All in favor?
I.
Aye. Thank you very much.